The Ouchies Batreps Foundation would like to remind you that it is pronounced Daishi, not Dayashi. A lot of people showed up to today's game. We ended up having to sort people down to only 7,500 BV per person and then split them out into separate sides. Nonetheless, we still ended up being at just short of a battalion on either person's side of the map. With such a large game, we couldn't quite do the Intersphere versus Clan, even though we had two Clan players in this particular match. Instead, it's going to be RedFor versus BluFor. We actually drew lots randomly, but Marbles here is actually Hunter's wife, so we'll get to see a little bit of action between the two of them. While Fatbird brings on the usual eclectic mix of Clan, Chromium, Pigeon units, and Memphis Mark brings in his unit of Group W and I think Kristen's Crushers. We, BluFor, actually lost the initiative, so we ended up putting our objective in the center of the map, while RedFor places their objective on the northern end of the map. You'll notice that since we got a lot of infantry, we went ahead and placed it inside the building, while RedFor did the opposite, placing it wide out in the open, favoring their assault mech heavy composition. We used the usual turn setup, or at least setup rules, where the slowest units have to set up on the half hex on the side of the board first, and moving up per increment all the way up to the fastest units, so that the fastest units at least have some sort of advantage in being able to make a sort of denied flank if the user decides to try it. The unit nomenclature for this bat rep is 1 bar for lights, 2 bars for mediums, 3 bars for heavies, and when it starts going crazy black, that's an assault mech. The rest of it is more or less NATO standards. As you can see, RedFor has already made a play for the northern objective, putting a lot of assault mechs out there in the open to push out there into the open terrain, while BluFor has decided to go for a center approach, putting a lot of their assault mechs along the center to plow through the woods, while the helo support manages to be just nearby carrying a gaggle of infantry. The infantry that is supplied by the Razelhofians is using their magnetic clamps and holding on to the outside of the Karnovs, while on the interior they're full of Asturian infantry provided by the Tarians. Hold up guys, I gotta go get some tea. I'll be right back. Hello World of Tomorrow, I'm sure the time has been well to you. If mutant jellyfish have taken over the world, I respectfully decline any kind of interview because I'm probably out there in the resistance. So, yeah, look out for each other. Don't get your brains. BluFor has opened up a flank on the southern end of the map with the locusts, 3 locusts actually, and a Grindel charging towards the heavy assets, the heavy support assets from RedFor that are also interacting on the southern end of the map. The assault lance that they're charging into actually outweighs them by quite a bit, but they're just there to skirmish and give that fire support element quite a headache because they only got a cicada down there to really run interference. But on the northern end, and I love being on this side, the fireball manages to Tim Tebow his way to victory, ducking behind the hill and avoiding an assault lance worth of fire in return, and giving us 2 points. As BluFor's units and RedFor's units begins executing their different maneuvers, you can see the assault mechs are lagging behind the mediums and the lights as they execute their flanking and skirmishing maneuvers to keep those assault mechs clear of their intended objectives. It's now turn 2, and this is when, in this particular scenario, the game can either be broke or won. And we begin moving all our assets in as close as we can to the objective as possible. This is actually the difference between a medium and a light mech. The light mechs tend to be able to be on the target by this turn, unless you're a fireball. In that case, you've been on the objective since turn 1. RedFor begins using their early initiative steps to move their fire support lance, while we play in turn using our light lances to chase them down. And hold on for a minute, I'm gonna go get some sinus medication. Welcome back, World of Tomorrow. If I end up being Patient Z, remind me not to hurt the ones I love. You know, like Herbert Bees, Alex Iglesias, you know, the people that matter in my life. The Karnovs arrive at their objective and begin unloading nearly a whole company worth of battle armor. They drop off the Longinus first, since their magnetic clamps and jump jets allow them to land on the ground. The Asturians have to wait for the Karnovs to land, but they don't have the movement points to do that yet. Meanwhile, on the northern end of the map, Tim Tebow, Mech Warrior pilot, takes his fireball and starts doing the cucaracha, trying to move just as much as he can, but stay within 1 hex of the objective so that he can contest it for at least one more turn while the assault lance over there keeps hammering in just about every weapon they have. They have a cicada though, and it's chasing him down, making his life miserable while he's getting backed up with a centurion with a rack. But since we elected to move the fireball earlier in the step, the cicada gets the opportunity to charge. He's 1 hex away, and he's going to charge the fireball to see if he can't make that connect. Despite quite a bit of ordnance being thrown at our mech warrior there in the north in the fireball, nothing really connects, and there's not a whole lot of opportunity fire. Hold on, I gotta go blow my nose. You want to know how infectious this sinus infection is? I think I got it from somebody doing a phone. The infantry, however, land almost completely uncontested right near the objective in the center edge of the board, while a vulture and 2 bushwhackers begin swinging around the parking lot and begin trying to take advantage of the open infantry, doing what they can to suppress them before they move in themselves. Twin vultures from BluFor begin making effective fire against the dragon along the center edge of the map, while the Viking desperately tries to hammer home as many LRMs into the light lance that is about to harry it like a bunch of hunters taking down a woolly mammoth, to absolutely no effect. It whiffs nearly everything. But on the northern end of the board, the fireball manages to survive despite the odds and gets into the physical phase with the cicada. It goes ahead and makes its charge roll, and it manages to connect, pushing the fireball off the objective and netting BluFor only 1 point for contesting the southern objective and nothing for the northern objective. The cicada by himself gave RedFor 2 points. And at the start of turn 3, the game has started entering close quarters as the assault lances from BluFor begin entering in the woods, trying to take advantage of the mediums and heavies from RedFor that have contested the objective along the center edge. Meanwhile, on the northern end, the fireball is no longer that useful, as the cicada has successfully given it something to have a grudge over for future turns. Brains! Brains! Welcome back, viewers from the future. From your perspective in the time stream, nothing has happened, but it's been almost a week in my time. I think I feel a little bit better. We shall see. On the southern end of the map, the light units from BluFor begin to harass, or at least they continue to harass, the assault support elements from RedFor, as they in turn supply all kinds of firepower downrange at the twin vultures holding the flank in the open area between the woods and the hill, and the bushwhackers themselves begin pushing their way into the woods against RedFor's assault lances, trying to take on the infantry that are currently hunkering down in the little area outside of the building. And on the northern end of the map, I advise my buddy who has an assault lance out there that he has to do or die. Don't do what would normally be tactically feasible, but to charge into the objective. We are at even points, and if they hold the objective uncontested, we are going to lose. So we have to send mechs into the meat grinder. As such, he rallies to the fore of a Berserker and the Dragonfire, crashing towards the objective as fast as they can. The objective here is to contest the location, not to necessarily live through it, and to cause as much damage as possible. We're going to try to throw as much firepower as we can their way, but at this point, without air support or any kind of artillery unit, it's going to be very difficult to do. And as the raptors begin circling their prey, the Viking begins to make the questionable decision to turn around and start shooting at its harassers at short range. It's not the most equitable trade. It actually misses most of everything. While being an assault mech, the raptors can't really do much of anything to it. They plink it a lot, leaving a bunch of little dents in the paint, but not really all that much to be concerned about. But behind the building, there's a more interesting action going on as a Cicada and a Commando begin trading shots out in a part of the field where no action has been going on before. They're kind of divorced from the rest of the action. But in the woods, the vulture-on-vulture action's coming to a head as Clan Chromium Pigeon unloads into the elite vulture pilot by Clan Jade Falcon. It manages to give it a +2 PSR through all its damage and manages to core out a whole section of its torso, leaving it exposed for future turns. Meanwhile, BluFor was fairly interested in the dragon out in the open and decided to throw a lot of firepower at it, but it ended up being all for naught as it mostly whiffed despite having a really low to-hit mod. And hold on, I don't think I'm completely bitter. Or T, or that's what zombies would say if they're British. But unbeknownst to BluFor, a cicada has snuck into the rear lines, managed to find the back of the king crab, and hits it with its PPC, taking its head off under the critical roll, or potentially taking it off with the medium laser follow-up. In the excitement, we weren't quite sure which would happen, but nonetheless, a pristine king crab killed to a back shot to the head. But on the northern end of the map, my buddy Hunter sixes Whitworth out there to contest the objective, to do anything he can to buy the rest of BluFor just a little bit more time, and he manages to die in the exchange, completely eviscerated. His record sheet was filled in. Nothing particularly statistically interesting, just completely blacked out. And in the exchange, the Whitworth managed to take out the rack ammo on the Centurion that was right in front of him. A defiant last stand from the Whitworth. It's funny in these Batreps, you can always tell when the fire phase starts because everyone breaks out their record sheets and then the dice start falling on the table. But in the center end of the board, the Karnov, having been shot down to enemy fire, the infantry are unchecked by this and decide to let out a deviled cry and start latching on the explosives to the mix that managed to get too close. One of the bushwhackers manages to get connected, and the Longinuses manages to get double crits on a leg attack against the bushwhacker, taking out its foot and hip actuator in one fell swoop, causing the pilot to start leaving bricks in his cockpit as the infantry are just sitting out right in front of him. Jade Falcon also loses a Vulture. The elite pilot manages to lose his engine in multiple critical hits. It is a sad day for Jade Falcon. The machine is otherwise fairly pristine. The woods have turned into chaos as infantry and mech alike are crashing through the woods trying to make their force felt, but the bushwhackers are holding on to the objective, contesting things, while the fire support lance just can't seem to make their weight felt quite yet. But on the northern end of the board, RedFor has clear dominance of the objective, and they're going to pull another 2 points despite having the center objective under contention. It's the top of turn 4, and it has turned into a mess. Infantry are holding the center objective, and it doesn't look like RedFor is going to be able to dislodge them, but they have the northern objective almost unchecked. Though BluFor does have some assault mechs nearby, and they are making their presence felt, they have to hold it uncontested, and we have to do it with both objectives if we want to make sure that there's some sort of chance at victory in the near future. RedFor's southern fire support element begins pushing hard into the center of the map, and the Viking, now fully armed and operational, or at least Marbles has figured out exactly what the sweep range is. She begins counting out the hexes to the targets that she wants, not getting too close to the scout mechs that are harassing, and careful enough to be at least aware that they're going to be surrounding it like they are in the next initiative step. Nonetheless, BluFor begins rallying everything they can. It's do or die for us, so we start pushing everything that we can back in there, recalling the commando despite having a perfectly good cicada to hunt, and pushing everything else that we can into the center edge of the map. If we're going to win 1 point, we're going to win the center edge of the map. But it's become clear to this, or at least to BluFor at this point, having lost the initiative, we really need to Tim Tebow our way to another victory because we just need to hold on. Time is not on our side. With them being only 2 points away from victory, we need to make sure that they're not contesting both objectives. They know that as well. Even though the bushwhackers are up to their knees in infantry, they stand up and try to hold still for just as long as they can while the Vulture begins swinging around, offering as much support as they can, often shooting at the helicopters that are sitting out in the parking lot right in front of them, and the catapult itself, sitting also just outside of the parking lot, nearly whiffs all his shots into the rockets right in front of them. But seeing an opportunity that only happens every now and then, I advise Hunter's wife to go ahead and charge the Cestas. He's kind of proud of that wacky-looking running mech in the center end of the map. And she's got like a 6x charge. I mean, you really don't see that often. So I go ahead and tell her what the odds are, and she's all like, yeah, let's do this. True fact, marriage is a blood sport. You just don't get told that before you get married. The other Jade Falcon Vulture goes down to combined fire from the fire support lance, which is now finally ringing home the shots, and the Vulture from Clan Chromium Pigeon.
It dies to another lost engine and multiple crits. It is a disaster again for J Falcon as they lost 2 mechs in almost the first turn they get to shoot. The infantry, however, are having a field day. There's PSRs everywhere as they're just latching on the explosives and denying movement, or at least complicating the movement patterns of the mechs that are out there, and there's nothing they can do about it. Again, it's just kind of a balanced bet for RedFor, because so long as that they can hold on to the objective or at least contest as much forces as they can, it's forces we can't send over to the north objective. Some of the damage finally hits home on the Viking, though. It turns out my advice for just generally kind of ignore the lights, don't sweat the small stuff, turns out to be really bad advice, as the Locust 2C cores open the right torso, manages to crit the ammo bins and blow it out. And amazingly, that's not even enough to cause a force withdrawal. Even Marbles' charge manages to connect, kills the Cestus by crushing its left torso, and at that point we call it. We fed a bunch of other mechs to the northern end of the map, and we just couldn't really seal the deal. They had the objective, and they had the southern objective as well. They were both contested, but it was going to be 2 points for them regardless. Good game. And that's been an Ouchies Batrep, and thanks for watching. You wouldn't tell, but this actually took about 3 weeks to edit and cut together. That's pretty abnormal.